As that played out, though, in the White House, Washington, the political world, the entire country absorbing some big news this afternoon. The Justice Department's Inspector General saying that he will review how the FBI and FBI Director James Comey handled the Hillary Clinton email investigation during the presidential campaign. Now, this coming 2 days after this exchange between James Comey, the FBI Director, and Independent Senator Angus King. This was during a Senate intelligence hearing on allegations of Russian hacking during the campaign. Well, I thought we had that clip, but obviously this has been quite an issue. All right, we have a statement here. Actually, this has been quite an issue here since the election. The role of the FBI. Now we have the Inspector General saying he's conducting an investigation. Just in the last few minutes, we have the statement from James Comey. He says, "I am grateful to the Department of Justice's IG for taking on this review. He is professional and independent. The FBI will cooperate fully with him and his office. I hope very much he is able to share his conclusions and observations with the public, because everyone will benefit from thoughtful evaluation and transparency regarding this matter." Again, that is the statement just in the last few minutes from James Comey, the FBI Director. Obviously a breaking news situation here. I want to bring in Jason Chaffetz, Congressman from Utah, also Chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us. I know you put a reaction up on Twitter a short while ago saying you support the Inspector General at the Department of Justice undertaking this review. You are encouraging this step. Let me ask you, what do you hope this will achieve?
Well, I think justice is what we all ultimately want there to be to prevail, and there are a lot of questions during this investigation that really raised eyebrows, probably from both sides of the political parties, about why were these things done and how were they done. And the timing in which they were done. And so Michael Horowitz, who's the Inspector General at the Department of Justice, is a very serious, well-respected attorney on both sides of the aisle. He is the right person to do this. It's going to take months, I'm sure, but they should get in there and they should go figure out what happened.
Well, there were several pieces of this sort of Comey saga and its role in the presidential campaign. Over the summer, he came out, made the announcement he was not going to be recommending charges against Hillary Clinton over the email server. At that point, he appeared before your committee. You had some very harsh words for him at that time. Then fast forward to the closing days of the presidential campaign. He sends that letter to you folks up there on Capitol Hill and says, hey, we may have some new information from these from this Anthony Weiner laptop. This thing, we are taking another look at it. Then he gets back in touch a few days later and basically says there was nothing to see here. Let me ask you about that last part of it, because you have Hillary Clinton has gone out in public now and said she thinks that cost her the election. That James Comey coming out and saying basically this thing is reopened, that Donald Trump going around telling everybody Hillary Clinton was back under investigation, and then Comey basically saying, yeah, there was no there, that cost her the election. Do you look at that and say that raises legitimate questions about James Comey and his judgment and how he conducted this?
Well, I think this investigation you'll find, or at least this review, as they would term it at the Inspector General, is not just about Director Comey. You got to go back to why did Director Comey have to do this in the first place? Why was Loretta Lynch meeting with President Clinton days before this announcement? Why was Peter Kadzlik, the legislative liaison, giving information perhaps inappropriately and prematurely? And then the timing when you're so close to an election. I mean, I think Director Comey, at least on the surface from the way I saw it, was living up to the obligation and what he had said under oath that he would get back to Congress. He did that in our hearing. He did it in a question from Lamar Smith in the Judiciary Committee. He had a duty and an obligation to inform Congress if they were going to continue to, open up this investigation, which he did. Personally, I think Hillary Clinton lost for a variety of reasons. I think there's a contributing factor, but I don't think it was the only reason. But I think this is why you have an Inspector General in the thrust for justice come in impartially after the election. Let's go figure out, because, hey, if everything was on the up and up, great. But process-wise, we got to get these things right. And there's questions, I think, on both sides of the aisle about how that went down.
Well, and you mentioned this, and I just want to be absolutely clear with this to folks out there. The announcement today coming from the Inspector General, it is not, as you say, just about James Comey and just about these decisions he made in the investigation. You also have here the Inspector General saying that there's allegations that a deputy director of the FBI should have recused himself from participating in the Hillary Clinton email investigation that had to do with that man's wife. She was a candidate for state senate in Virginia. Her campaign was supported by Terry McAuliffe, an ally of the Clintons. There's a very sort of complicated web there. And also, you say there was at one point a revelation through WikiLeaks that perhaps the Clinton campaign had been told at a congressional hearing was going to be asking some uncomfortable questions, given a heads up perhaps by that. So that is also featured in this. But the bottom line question here, I wonder, it's the election's over now. Donald Trump is the president-elect. In terms of Comey, we do know, you say he had an obligation maybe to tell you guys if there was going to be a change in the status of the investigation. But do you think now, looking back at it, to make such a big splash with reopening an investigation, only to say a few days later, no, it's closed again, nothing to see here. Do you think maybe, looking back, the better thing to do would have been to wait till after the election rather than have that sorted out in the closing days, the frantic closing days of a campaign?
I think and I'm only guessing here, but at least from my vantage point, what Director Comey was doing is once he knew that they were spending money, time, assets, diving back into this investigation, despite his testimony that I believe it was in July, he had a constitution or a responsibility to come back to Congress and inform us. And that's what he did. Now, there are political ramifications for that, but we would have also yelled and screamed at him if he had done it or not informed us because of the political considerations. So I understand that the timing for Hillary Clinton appears at best as untimely, but, you know, she created this mess. It wasn't Director Comey, it was Hillary Clinton. She should have disposed of this years ago. They still haven't gotten us all the materials from the State Department. The State Department itself still has an open investigation. So I think she can only look to herself and maybe visit Wisconsin. That would have helped too.
All right, Jason Chaffetz, Congressman from Utah, chair of the House Oversight Committee. Thanks for joining us from Capitol Hill. Now joining me on phone.